Okay, so welcome to Course Hacks for Higher Ed. We're here to demystify higher ed, to bring our best secrets, tips, practices, mindset shifts in order to help you succeed in your college courses, but also to just have your frame of mind be more positive and restorative, because what a semester, what a year. In order to survive this semester, we need all the best tricks that we can get. So today we're going to talk about office hours, what they are, how you can get the most out of them, what to ask, what not to say, all of those tricks. So I'm Janelle Corrett. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Biological Sciences at the University of Rhode Island. Joining me today are Associate Professor Brian Dewsbury, who's also in the Department of Biological Sciences at URI, and Assistant Dean Michelle Fonts in the College of the Environment and Life Sciences, the Dean of Diversity, Recruitment, and Retention. Is that right, Michelle?
You got it.
By week 6, we'll get.
I'm going to perfect the intro. I will. So let's dive right into it. Office hours. I think this is a really interesting thing because when I was an undergrad, I didn't know what office hours were. And I actually thought that they were the times that professors could not see anyone because they were in their office. So they were busy.
Well, it's because it's an unfortunate name, right? That's part of the problem, I think. But go on.
Yeah. And we assume that everyone knows what office hours are, which they do not. But then I figured that part out. And so I want to put this out there to you. What are office hours for?
So one of the things I want to ask the two of you, because it's been a little bit since I created a syllabus, isn't that the first day of class something that you talk to them about as far as office hours are concerned?
Should talk to them about it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I actually changed my office hours. So they're not even called office hours anymore.
Okay, that's good. I think you're right now. I think there's a misconception, right, of what it means. So I would say the first thing is for us to try to communicate to as many professors as we can to communicate that to students, and don't assume that they know what they are, right? But the other thing that I want to say about that is there is such an intimidation factor for students to meet with faculty members. It just is, it is it is kind of that thing where I don't want to go to my professor until I really am in severe trouble because I don't want to bother them. I don't want to feel stupid. All of those things is what I've heard from students. And I try really hard to say, listen, I'm not telling you that it's going to be easy, and some are going to be easier to talk to than others, but you have to do it. Why? Because you need to get the answers to your questions to be successful in your class. And so what I kind of prescribe to those that need to go see professors is, listen, go prepared. There's got to be a reason. You can't go in there and be like, hi, how are you? I'm struggling. Okay. You want to really think about your plan of action. So think about the things that you really are struggling with, and talk about, I tried to read this myself, but I really don't understand it. Can you explain? Or I'm really struggling doing this by myself. Do you have a suggestion of a student I can work? Like, really think about the things that you're going to go and talk to your professor about. Because the one thing I understand from professors that I work with is it's really hard when a student comes to my office hours and it's like, I'm not doing well, I need help. And they don't have any specifics about that. So for the students that are listening, I say, try your best not to be afraid. You are paying for your education, whether you have a scholarship, this is your investment. You want to do well in your class, you have to overcome this obstacle of fear or whatever it is and just go for it. And the way to do it well is to be prepared. Even if you write 2 or 3 questions that you're asking to show that you were thoughtful about that time you're going to see the professor, can really help that to go well and make you feel okay to go and visit with a professor and talk with them.
Yeah, Michelle, I agree with you. I think it is great to be prepared, but I also think that office hours are not just for students that are struggling. In my opinion, every student should at one point, at least in the semester, see their professor outside of class, talk with them outside of class. And maybe now it's all on Zoom or whatever. I think it's worth it even before, early on in the semester, which I would say we're still early on in the semester. Maybe we're before your first exam for the course. And my question that I have a pet peeve question and I have a question that I love to hear. And they're kind of two sides of the same coin. I think they are the same question. But my pet peeve question is when students ask me right off the bat, what's your trick for getting an A in this class? And then that's always like okay, there's no trick, it's all laid out there. But and there is this mindset that there's like some secret, and this is course hacks, right? We're trying to get those secrets out there. The flip side to that is the question that I hope to hear is like, how would you strategize to get the most out of this class or to do well in this class? Like, what would your strategy be? And that way, like, you're getting them on your side and you're getting the professors to think, like, what would this experience be like for me as a student? Which I think can help. And I actually think they are the same question, but just phrased in a slightly different way to get your professors on your side, as opposed to being like, oh, this is a student that's like just about the grade and not about the learning. What do
So
you think,
now,
Dr.
now, what do you call your office hours?
Well, I teach intro entomology this semester, so I
Mhm,
actually call them bug me.
mhm,
And I know bug me means like you're bothering someone in the
mhm,
colloquial world, but in
mhm.
entomology, we're all about the bugs. So I like to flip it.
Yeah,
I
we
want people to
we
be like, bug me is a good thing. Come on, bring it to me. Bug me.
we get the little humor there. We the double entendre. We got you.
We're all about the puns.
Well, in terms of naming, I think names matter. And one of the things with office hours is it's called office hours. So to the naive person, it's assumed that it takes place in an office. And for people like myself who teach high enrollment classes, that's mathematically problematic. I have a nice office, but I have a small office. It holds two chairs and I teach 150 students. There's 2 hours per week. And if that was the arrangement under which I had office hours, then you can just do the math and realize there's a limited amount of students I can serve. In addition, I understand that for first year students, the act of walking up 4 flights of stairs and coming on the hall could feel like a green mile for a lot of the reasons Michelle just explained. So because I understand that psychology, I flipped the whole concept on its head and called it student hours. In fact, in my syllabus, it's called the learning lounge, which is a lot more
I
cheesy
like the
than what you said.
lounge.
Um,
Sounds exciting.
and so in so at URI, in my class, a lot of my first year students stay in actually one particular dorm, and the basement of that dorm has a lounge, and it holds about 30, 35 students. There are whiteboards, there are seats, and so it turns into a mini class, right? A small mini class. And as Nell said, not only do struggling students come, people who just come because there's explicit language on this is just part of the course. This is not like a lifeline. This is what part of what you do just in general to further your understanding of the material. So, people who understand the material well or maybe having some struggles, they all come, and then now you can start pairing people up, right? You can have each one teach one situation, and you can just do a number of great things. So in terms of course hacks, my hope is certainly that you have professors who bring the temperature down a bit on what it means to go and attend office hours or whatever it's called. But I just want to reinforce Michelle's point about being specific. And I think that is not just about office hours specifically, but just the entire conversation. Because I think what happens if a wall is hit, there is, okay, I studied, and I worked hard, but I didn't get the result that I wanted. And I realize it's for many students, it's a bit of a journey to go from I studied hard and didn't do well to identifying the specific things, behaviors you should do differently in order for that not to repeat itself. So this kind of ties to what Nell is saying about how would you approach your course, right? I know you worked hard. We're not questioning your effort. We're not questioning your resolve, but you can have resolve and still not do well because your strategies are misaligned, right? So this is where these smaller student hour sessions, these one-on-ones could be really helpful because we can talk to you about that. But in order to do that, we have to get something, right? So come with, all right, here's how I prepare. Can you tell me if this is the way to approach it? Can you comment on my strategies?
Yeah. And I think
So
that, professors can help with that.
mhm,
I mean, I know that I have students fill out in my classes where I have exams how they studied. not
Right.
just how many hours, but how they
Mm-hmm.
actually did it, to see how are those strategies working for them.
Mm-hmm.
That gives you some specifics to work around. But if your professor doesn't do that, I think, Brian, you're absolutely right. Like, you think about that first, do that work in preparation first, and then say, well, look, I did the reading, like you say what you did, I highlighted, and
Mm-hmm.
then go in. I think there's some self-reflection that helps when you're going to seek advice,
Mm-hmm.
which is what office hours are, right? It's advice from the person that is then grading you.
And but you,
Well, should Michelle, just real quick before you
yeah.
comment, should we spend a bit more time on, I think what you said earlier, Michelle, on just the act of, getting up and going to the office hours, right? I don't want to make light of that at all, because half the battle here is just getting them to come, right? So we can talk all day here about what we do when they're there and why it's beneficial, but let's perhaps talk about the psychology of just getting up and being okay with that process.
Well, I was
And
trying
Michelle, I know
to,
this is your wheelhouse.
yeah, I was just going to say, very similar to what you're saying, Brian, is that um, I have to say, I know some of our professors, and some of them are not going to do what the two of you do. Okay. So that's why I do think we need to talk about the strategy for the student, because we have to be frank and honest with each other. There are some professors that we know that are like, no, they come with questions. That's what I'll handle. And I give them the content and they got to roll. So
Mhm,
that's just keeping it real. So
mhm,
that's why I think you're right, Brian. We really need to just kind of talk about how do we get them there, despite the demeanor of a faculty member, despite
mhm.
anything, because it is about their success. So overcoming the fear is hugely important.
Well, that's kind of why I suggested the question of like, well, how would you approach it?
Mhm.
Because I think back to like my most contentious calls with Comcast, you know, and like trying to get
So
customer
so so
service,
every call with Comcast is what you.
I think that strategy of like, well, what would you do? What would you do? Is really good way to get someone to start empathizing a little bit more. So if you're facing a prof or instructor or even a TA that is just, not ready to engage on that level, clearly, but that's what you're needing is someone to help you in that arena, then I think you need to get a little empathy and ask some questions that build the empathy in. I think there's
Mhm.
there's ways to do that. I'm not saying I'm
Well,
best friends with Comcast now, but
well, what if they're like, you should switch providers?
Well, I also want us to recognize, right? The fear is real. I remember it. I remember it clearly. I was afraid, right? So the only thing that I can say about that is you have to overcome it no matter what, because that is part of your success. And so it is very hard to get students to press. Anytime I'm talking to students that are struggling, I say, have you gone and seen the professor? Well, no, he doesn't seem like your responsibility to yourself is to try. And if you go with your questions and you feel like they weren't answered, I want to know, because I have a responsibility in my role to know that information and make it known, right? So that's number one. And number two, there are more than one person in that subject area that you can talk to. If someone you go to, whether it be the professor or the TA, does not feel helpful, there are other avenues. There are always other avenues, because there are people that are in specific roles everywhere nationwide, not just at URI, that don't do it well. Let's keep it real, right? So if they don't, and you go and have a bad experience, which happens more often than I'd like to really know, but it does, I send them to people that I know will be helpful. And so it's about you finding the people that are your people that you can sit and have conversations about. And I'm not saying that that's easy. I am saying it is necessary. And that is a lot of the work that I do with students, is to identify who are your key support mechanisms, because you can't do this alone. None of us should be doing this work alone, no matter what it is, right?
see
So
course hack number 2, your community.
there it is. There it
If
is.
I were more fancy, I would be like, there's the link.
Right? I know, right? But it's it's
You're a real research scientist. Everything has
see?
references, right? I'm
Yeah,
citing my sources, damn
that's right.
it.
There will be a citing of the source at the end of the podcast. But I think it's I feel like we say it a lot, but and it's harder. for people, especially introverted folks that aren't used to doing this. They especially, I think about our first year students and I'm so concerned for them because it is so intimidating, but they have got to overcome that for their success. Students in the sciences, um, it's a different ball of wax. I'm sorry. You have to take more time and attention to get it right, especially in your first couple of years as you're building. They have to overcome that obstacle. And if they need tips, there are people to do that too. The Academic Enhancement Center can talk to them in cells. I'm there to talk to them about that. They need to go to people that they can just, this is what I really need to do to be successful. Can you help me? And it's okay to do that too.
Yeah. And it is, I think that multiple meetings helps too, to build that relationship. And
Mhm.
just note to all students, the first time that you go to meet your professor is not the time to ask for a letter of recommendation.
Oh no. Oh no. Can you
So,
know
so
me?
now we have any questions on the feed?
Now we're reaching the limits of my technical know-how, Brian.
Way to not answer my question there.
Working on it. You keep chatting amongst yourselves. I will find that out right now.
Yeah, I will say this, just while we're chatting. I think that Brian and I have worked pretty well together in these circumstances because we both have students that come that just have not gotten good guidance about these things that we're talking about. No one's talked to them about it. Sometimes we'll encounter juniors and
Mhm,
that have not been embraced in a way to just talk to them about support structure and opportunities.
mhm,
So, part of the responsibility is on us as adults to do better. But I also have to say to students, you have got to empower yourself to when you're struggling to do the work, to get the people on your side to be supportive. It is just super important because Brian, myself, we can't be there for all students. So I love that we're doing call hacks to let them know the start of these things because I know it's tough, but I know how necessary it is.
right.
And no, no, we don't have comments right now, but you can always leave your comments afterwards in the chat. And I do think that even though we have focused a little bit, and it's true, I think office hours have a sort of contentious connotation to them because there are a lot of students that have negative experiences with them. But also, I know at least one other, but many other professors that, I mean, we really do want you to do well in these classes, right?
Yeah.
I think all educators are really coming from that place. And so I think it's just about accessing that emotion that you know that your professor does want you to do well, even if there's sort of a mismatch of expectations and a mismatch of communication styles. That is a place that I think you're coming in a point of agreement on.
Mhm.
And so now it's a matter of what tools and how to communicate. Okay, where am I missing the mark? How can you help me, right? Like cultivating your mentors in a way.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, Dr. Correa, I know Michelle and I have to bounce in a couple of minutes,
Thank
but
you
I
guys
think
so much for
we had a
chatting
great
about it.
conversation.
Yeah.
Uh,
There's no easy answers here, but thank you. We'll see you again next week on Course Hacks for Higher Ed.